we have StayFi at our properties. So anybody who stays there and logs into the internet, we capture that email right away. I think our email campaign and strategy was very low the first few years that we started this, mostly from a standpoint of we were relying so heavily on OTAs, Airbnb, VRBO. And then once we had that ability to book direct, we really wanted to focus a lot of our time and energy to get people to book direct with us versus the OTAs. Because I think the biggest thing is too is guests don't realize, I think, how much the service fees are on those
Yep.
OTAs and how it can really skyrocket a bill. But also too, then as owners, as part of this brand journey, is you really then get to decide the touch points that your guests have with you and what those touch points look like.
Hey folks, welcome back to Direct Booking Simplified, where we break down the strategies and tactics to win in direct bookings. On today's show, I have Katie Wanzer. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Gil.
Yeah, how are you doing? How's the heat right now?
The Midwest is getting slammed with, we got slammed with rain all spring and summer, and now the heat's coming. So, just a typical Midwestern summer, but it's great. It's warm. So here in the Midwest, we love that.
That's so foreign to me. Being in San Francisco, we never get any weather beyond like 50 degrees to like 60 degrees all year round. So I actually find it very interesting to see like people actually having to change seasons, and I wish I had a little bit more of that in my life, but maybe not during these super hot times.
No, no. But I mean, it is beautiful to see the four seasons, but to think it'd be a consistent temperature, especially all the way up here in Wisconsin, it's a foreign concept. So I'm also envious of your static weather all the time, to say the least.
Yeah, I guess that's why we travel. Like for us, like we travel to go get the heat or get the snow. So yeah, that's the
Come
flip
to the
side of it.
Midwest, we get both. We get ample amounts of snow and
Yeah.
ample amounts of heat. So come visit. We have it all.
Right. Before we get too deep into it, Katie, do you mind giving folks a brief introduction to who you are and kind of a glimpse into your portfolio?
Yeah. So I am Katie Wanzer. I am one of the co-owners and co-founders of Wisco Hosts. We are a co-hosting company that focuses on premier vacation rentals in the great state of Wisconsin. I am also a co-owner along with my husband and our amazing business partners. Shout out to Luke and Katie of a boutique motel in Door County, and that property also has a 5 bedroom four-bath house on it as well, that overlooks the water. So my husband and I co-host 5 other places throughout Wisconsin, and then we have one of our own. So really got a lot of irons in the fire when it comes to the short-term rental and hospitality industries.
How'd you get started in, well, probably like two parts. Like how'd you get started in the STR side of things? Then getting into co-hosting, or maybe you got co-hosting first, and then transitioning to the motel side of things.
Yeah. So our story, my husband's story and I are just I don't want to say we fell into it because we didn't. We both, we're both millennials. Like we have corporate jobs. My husband runs a tech company and I worked in corporate and public relations and branding. And, it really kind of was, we were looking for something else, a way to invest our money besides the traditional 401k, the traditional putting into a savings account and making the 3 cents a year that you made off of it. And so my husband was really kind of the brainchild behind it of like, we should look at, doing a short-term rental, like a house in one of our favorite places in Wisconsin, which is Door County. And, we thought about it, we looked into it, and we were like, all right, like, we're going to do this. And so October 2021 is when we bought our place, Northwoods Farmstead. We completely renovated the house and revamped it. And now it sleeps 10. It's a 3 bedroom, 3 bath. It's beautiful. It sits right on the outside of town near water. So It's great. So we got this going, and my husband was like networking with some other people who were also looking at starting short term rentals. And my husband had spoken with somebody, and he's like, "Hey, he's like, I want to buy one in the same area. I don't live close. Like, would you be open to co hosting for us?" And so then that's kind of how co hosting got started. And so then from there, we obviously gained more clients. More homes. We spread out of Door County. Majority of our short term rentals are in Door County. We have one in way northern Wisconsin, so kind of up by Upper Michigan, and we just started that one earlier this year. And so it's kind of just evolved over time, and we really love it. It's been a good opportunity, especially too when you're just starting out. Really kind of helping people get their feet up from underneath them. Teach the lessons and learnings that you learned yourself when you started. So we're loving it, and we obviously love our houses and our clients, and it's kind of been an ever evolving journey to say the least.
Yeah. So the your first co-hosting was someone that you already had a relationship with, that someone you knew, and they wanted to get into investing and wanted to leverage your knowledge and capabilities. Is that right?
Yep. And yeah. And that's like, it really started with simple things of, my husband and the owner kind of really having like the numbers conversations of, cash flow and, this is what you should be looking for when looking for a property. And then when he, went under contract, then that's kind of where I stepped in from an operations piece. Because you don't know what you don't know until you do it. So, for me, it was more questions of I'm gonna get, two sets of sheets for each bed. And it's like you need four sets of sheets because we are a very seasonable market. So our high time is really from like May until like January. That's when a lot of people go to Door County. It's really like it's probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in the fall. So when you're doing a churn of people all the time, it's really hard to wash, eight beds of linens in one day when you've got 4 hours to turn the place between guests. So really kind of how to optimize, but then also like prepare for those busy seasons, that high tide as well. So that's really kind of how the co-hosting, came to be. Uh, and for us, I think the other thing too is you learn trial by fire. And so
Yeah.
being able to also be that person, to kind of help be like, oh, we've had this situation before, this is how we were handling it. Has I think was also bringing a peace of mind, especially to new owners as well.
Yeah. And have the subsequent owners or co-hosting owners been friends and families, or did you end up figuring out how to reach new audiences?
Yeah, so the first one was more of my husband and him met in a group. And so they had like slowly become, I don't want to, they, we slowly become friends with them, but it was more
Right.
acquaintances. Other ones, like it really was, business development of really searching people out. Cause I think, the biggest thing is that as co-hosts, like my husband and I, we really focus on revenue versus occupancy. So a lot of property management companies, really look to put your places sometimes at lower rates and just get high occupancy numbers. Where for us, we're really motivated on making sure that you're priced well, you're priced at making a profit, but also too, that might not mean having your house be rented, 80, 90% of the time. So it's really making sure that like your ADR is higher, versus your occupancy. So we really sought out then some other people who were like, your house is beautiful and you've done a lot of great stuff to it, but you have 90% occupancy, but we think you could probably get more, ADR, average daily rate, for staying there if you move with us. And so for us, that was kind of like the biggest thing. Was people were very motivated by that. But I think, the other great thing is with our business model, because we already have connections in a team. it was really just easy for us to bring them under our umbrella. You know, we have an amazing cleaner. We've got a great landscaper. We have a snow plow guy because, you know, we get tons of snow every winter. So it was really like when you took us on, you already got a team of everybody that we already had pre-established relationships with. And so it was really easy to kind of just like bring them under our umbrella, which could also help cut down with like operating costs because you kind of have already, you have everything and everybody lined up and set to go.
Yeah, yeah. On the revenue management side of things, are you using any tools to help you figure out what the right ADR is? Are you using Price Labs or Wheelhouse or anything like that?
Yeah, we use Price Labs. Obviously, Airbnb has come out with some new ones, but as we kind of shift off of the OTAs and have really focused a lot more on direct, Price Labs has been a huge one for us. My husband is a number guy. God bless him. He's very left brain. I am very right brain, so we really equal each other very well. But Price Labs has been really great, and I think also too, you know, using different tools to be able to see like what are comparable places in your area charging per night. So, you know, Price Labs can sometimes be like, hey, you know, you need to charge like 20% more or there's more demand. When you're looking at other people that are booked and it's like, okay, like maybe we're a little bit high on this, like maybe we should come down. So I think it's also just putting kind of the elbow grease yourselves of, you know, going and creating a list of people who are comparable to your place to also see what they're charging for a night, kind of what their occupancy is, and then using that as kind of a gauge if you're, you know, kind of right in the sweet spot or if you're a little higher, a little low.
Got it. So you use somewhat like the enemy method, or like having a list of folks that you look at on a regular basis to help you align your pricing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, the biggest thing too is because in our market specifically, Door County is a very competitive market. You know, there's been 600 new like rentals there within the last year. And so for us, it's getting more and more competitive. So especially too, a lot of the places we co-host are in the biggest chunk of the amount of like 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms that can sleep six. And so not only it's like, okay, looking at what kind of amenities can we work with the owners to like put in or add to it to make it a more appealing place to guests. But then also too, it's benchmarking you with other people of like, man, we would should really consider getting kayaks or bicycles because people around us who are with that same comp have those. And so those are kind of attractions too. So it's really kind of kind of being a little detective to see, you know, not only pricing, but also what amenities they have and what's going to make you stand out more from that perspective. So people want to stay with you versus that.
Yeah, yeah. Talk to me a little bit like how'd you got into your motel? How did you get into going from STRs to the coasting side to all the way to buying many more keys in that case?
Yeah. So the motel story is kind of a wild one. I'm going to be quite honest. So, our business partners, Luke and Katie, you know, our husbands had met a few years ago. This was when Mitch was doing his research, my husband, about getting into short-term rentals. And Luke and Katie had just bought their first one in the Smokies. And so they lived close. The boys met through a Facebook group and, you know, we became friends with them. We were at a conference a few years ago and they were talking about kind of like, what's your next story of coming up and like your short term rental game. And I think the other big thing too is because of the markets we're in, they're becoming really heavily regulated just because of short term rentals. And so it's like, okay, like, what can we do? Like, what's the next step to be able to cash flow more, you know, to kind of look at this and be like, hey, you know, how can we continue to evolve? And so we were like, yeah, let's start looking at, you know, motels. And so Door County has a ton of them. We went and looked at some of them and, you know, none of them were really this like super great fit. And then my husband and Luke stalked LukeNet, which is, you know, where good people put businesses for sale. And this one came up. um, Luke and Mitch went up there the next day and looked at it, looked at the rooms. Like the location is like right in the heart of downtown of one of the little villages. It's right across from a state park. It's right across from the public beach. It was very outdated internally. And so, that was kind of our biggest thing is we really wanted to elevate that experience knowing the location was so great. So, my other business partner, Katie, went with them and they were like, this place is great. We should put an offer in on it. And I had never gone and see it. Like, I've never physically saw it with my own two eyes until after we were under contract. So, we get under contract with it. They're like, "You gotta go see this place," and I'm like, "Yeah, we're under contract for it," and I just remember walking into one of the rooms, like, very dated from the '50s, like, lace curtains, wallpaper, everything was wallpapered, carpeting everywhere, and I just remember looking at my husband and just be like, "Oh my god, what did we just do?" And so we spent the last 8 months then renovating it head to toe, ripping everything out and redoing it. Hired a professional designer to help us with the rooms. So we're a 15 units. Seven of them have single king beds. Eight of them have double queens, and then there's also the old house that the old motel owners used to live in. We converted that to a short term rental, and so that's a five bedroom, four bath that sleeps 10. And so, the four of us like really kind of buckled down and renovated this place within the last 8 months. I still don't know how we did it, based on what it looked like, but it's been an amazing journey. And, we've been open since May and we're going through our first summer. And, it's been a little wild at times because it's been so busy, but it's been just an amazing learning curve. And, now all of us are kind of like, all right, like, let's go get another one. That was fun. So yeah, so it's been a journey to say the least. So
Mm, nice. What was your biggest learning going through that entire journey?
uh, for me personally, I think the biggest thing is like um the amount of like different hats that you play. I think when you look at entrepreneurs, it's like you're the accountant, you're the project manager, you're the cleaner, you're the guest service person, that you're the front desk. We have a team now in place, but I think the biggest thing is that you got to learn every position to be able to teach and then be able to bring somebody on into that position. And, we've had enough great contacts up there just because of our businesses that, we were able to bring on cleaners. Like our cleaner helped us like, set that all up. And so I think it's just you gotta learn it all. Because if you don't, it's part of the business. And I think knowing the inner workings of everything just makes you a better entrepreneur, a better, businesswoman in my case, but then also just a better owner in general. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Was there any surprises going through that process? I'm sure there
yeah,
was a
that
ton
so
of them.
yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is the first building was built in the '50s, that building was built in the '80s, and it was like everything that, everything that could go wrong did go wrong, I feel like. We're 150 yards from, Lake Michigan, which is one of the biggest freshwater, it's the biggest one of the biggest freshwater lakes in the world. And we had to drill new wells and our wells were dry. So it's like,
Oh, no.
learning to kind of like, yeah, that was a learning curve. But working with 1950s plumbing, so there were many things that went wrong. But at the end of the day, I'm a big fan of, you grow through what you go through. And I think we all really grew anytime that we kind of ran over, stumbled over a hurdle, or fell into a pothole, because there were a lot of bumps along the way.
Yeah. Even with all those bumps, do you feel like it was a good step, at least from an investment standpoint?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like, yeah, we've had a great summer. Our investment has paid off. Our hard work has paid off. I always joke with my husband that the tears of frustration that I cried multiple times, paid off. So now in hindsight, looking back, like, the struggle was real, but it's been so worth it. So it's the growing pains that I think, when you own a business that you all go through at some point. It's just learning to trust yourself and know that you're going to figure it out, even though it might not seem like in the moment you will. You'll figure it out. So
Yeah.
trust yourself.
So now you've done a handful of short-term rentals, you've done the motel. Coming out of both experiences, where do you see yourself growing in the next 2, 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, definitely continue to grow the co-hosting business. Like I really love the co-hosting business, as does my husband. I think it's really for me, it's really gratifying, like helping other owners and kind of being part of their journey. We've talked about, buying another short-term rental. Kind of with interest rates right now, I think everybody's kind of like, the numbers don't really work, but
Yeah.
we're being positive that they will. But I think we would definitely do another motel again. It's just once again finding, that one piece of property that, you can really do a lot with and make it into something special.
Yeah, yeah. On that one, how did you end up funding the motel?
So we did end up going through a bank. We own it. So we are the investors of it, the four of us. So I think that was also a really proud moment of trying to make that work. But we had an amazing local bank. Bank of Luxembourg really came in, hometown bank, and they really worked with us to make the property what we want it to be and what it is, and it turned out amazing. So
That's awesome. So yeah, you didn't have to bring in new investors that could dilute your share of it, but also make it a lot more challenging to navigate. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Um, I've had a chance to go through both the website on your motel and also on your SDR side. This is like a good transition to the second segment is really around kind of the brand aesthetics, kind of how you present yourself. Could you give our listeners a sense of how you think about direct bookings and the marketing of it? Like, how do you approach it?
Yeah. So, direct bookings, I think for us, when we first started, we definitely got a lot more direct bookings then because we were the first people to really do it in our market. And now it's obviously becoming more competitive. And so our landing pages that we had, it really didn't tell the whole story of the brand we were wanting to convey. And, I would say the same thing about the motel. My background is in public relations and branding. And so, really focusing a lot, even with our first one, I think, my husband got really sick of me when I was like, this is not within our brand standard. And he's like, Katie, it's one house. And I'm like, this is the foundation of something we're going to build on. And so, we didn't know we were going to get into co-hosting, but now we are. And we get a lot of people who, stayed at Northwoods Farmstead, which is the house that my husband and I own. And it was like they knew the experience they were going to get. So therefore, now we get a lot of repeat customers who are like, hey, I stayed at Northwoods, but I'm coming up with like my kids and all of my grandkids. Like, I want to go stay at Stark House, that sleeps 12 people. And it really helped us by focusing on kind of like what are who we're trying to target, what the experience we're trying to convey, and then building our brand off of that. We know that people want to stay with us because they know if they stay at one, they're going to have the same experience as if they stay at like one of our co-hosting properties. And so I think really spending the time and focusing on building your brand and creating that brand is just going to make like your marketing dollars and your marketing spend go a lot farther than if you didn't. And so now the biggest thing, obviously, that we're focusing on is so both of these are brand new websites, really focusing on SEO, but then also when we look at, our brand in general, yes, it is the houses you're staying at, but it's also where the houses lie and where the houses are. So focusing a lot of like our blog posts and our social media strategy on what are the experiences you could have in that market while staying with us. So we do a lot of things that are kind of around like we play tourists ourselves, which is the best part. It is so much fun. And I highly recommend owners, go and be a tourist of where you do have your short term rentals, because not only then, as part of the guest experience in your guest book or, in your conversations with guests of like, highly recommend this restaurant. If you like fish, highly recommend this restaurant. If you want, Wisconsin's infamous for cheese curds, for some of like the best cheese curds you'll ever but then also kind of like building that stratosphere around it so that people know and begin to trust you of like, hey, she said to go there for ice cream and the ice cream was phenomenal. Because it adds to that brand of where to send people for what based on what they're looking for. So it also really just like levels up your hospitality and your guest experience in general. Um, so we've kind of done a lot around being tourists and then filming that at tourists and using that then in our blog posts to help with SEO, to do that on our social media, with restaurants or things to do to kind of like add that experience. But I think the other thing too is that it makes you as hosts and owners like way more personable. Um,
Yeah.
I had a woman a few weeks ago who messaged me on Instagram and she goes, "Hey, by the way, I really love your videos because like I know when I reach out to you, like who I'm talking to." So it also kind of just adds that human element to you as well, which is great because you obviously want your guests to come to you if they need anything. So it's kind of really creating that whole sphere that can just help with your marketing spend so much easier.
Yeah. So when you say branding, you're not necessarily just talking about the logos, the colors, the brand aesthetics, the positioning, but it goes beyond to really understand one, like who your guest avatar is, and two, kind of the area where you're actually providing the service to.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think the biggest thing is like hospitality doesn't have to stop at like event venues or motels or hotels. Like, you can bring the hospitality anywhere and especially like with your short-term rental. So it's really elevating that experience um of you not only building that brand, because we've really built our social media brand off of doing things like going to restaurants, trying out ice cream, going and playing, all the different mini golf courses and then like rating them. So it's like you're building your brand just as your business because then people are like, oh, I want to stay with Wisco Host because they did a really funny bit on like a top mini putt courses in Door County. Or we really love that they ranked all of the best old chains. Like things like that, where it can really just help get your name out there easier, but also it brings another dimension to you and your business as well.
Yeah. And it sounds like you produce content from all your visits and kind of filming on both your social media, but also sounds like you do it on your blog on your website as well too. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. So my background obviously being in public relations and communications, blog writing is not as intimidating as people will think it is. It's not, yes, it's a really great way to help with your SEO. Um, but it's also a really good way for you to like show, like be able to highlight and show things that are like within your markets and kind of like make it fun. So it's even like fun things where, yeah, focus on the SEO, but then also too, like it's passion. For me, it's very easy to write a blog post and be like, hey, I went and did, all of these things. This is what I recommend that you do. So it kind of just adds just like another touch point and another layer to help with marketing, but then also to help like with your SEO and just building your brand.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about kind of the brand aesthetics. There's a pretty high quality for you on your websites and some of the assets that you produce. How did you get there? And obviously the years of experience definitely helps, but for
Yeah.
hosts that are probably not brand experts, like how would you guide them through figuring out what their brand looks like? How do you present yourself, the positioning? What are some like resources or tips that you provide?
I mean, the internet is really a gift. So I remember, This was my first job out of college many years ago. I was working for a nonprofit, and we were doing a bunch of marketing around an upcoming conference, and I had one of the MDs because it was a nonprofit, it was a medical organization, and he goes, "We should really start to build a brand around this." And I'm like, "I don't know what you mean." As in, he's like, "We want to be known as like the best conference for this." And so it's like, okay. So he's like, besides the conference itself, like, how are we going to brand it so that when you say the conference, people know what you're talking about? So it's kind of like, when you talk about Patagonia or like you talk about North Face, like you know the brand you're getting. And so for me, it literally was like just a deep dive into Google. There's so many like free sheets, like free activities that you can do around like just getting the critical thinking questions of like your brand avatar. What do you want people to think, feel, and see? Like when they see your logo or they stay at one of your places. And I think it's like, don't don't overthink it. Like, almost sometimes it's like a gut reaction to it is kind of what you can start to build off of, because over time and how your business grows and what you're looking to get out of it, that's obviously going to change. But there's so many free resources like online that really has helped me at least like learn besides my career of how to continue to do this. But I think also too, it's not as daunting as it seems. There's a ton of books on just like building your brand and like how to even start looking at your marketing spend differently. And so use the power of the internet. It can really go a long way. And that's how I think, I really kind of got my foot in the door, but then also it became a passion of mine because yes, it is the colors and the logos and like what it's conveying, but it's also like the true meaning behind it. And I think when you know what you want your short-term rental or your co-hosting company or whatever it may be to be, it really becomes a passion at that point because you want everybody to experience and feel the same when they step into your home or they stay at your property.
Yeah. I would love to at one point produce a blog post together with you on our channel around some of the fundamentals there. So I might reach out to you separately because I think that there's a lot of like valuable resources, like you mentioned, outside, but really trying to help distill it down for some of our listeners that may not be branding experts. I think they'll get a lot of value out of that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just the simple questions of if you were going to see a guest walk through your door, like what is the type of who do you think would be the most comfortable in your home? Or when you design your short-term rental, like when you lay it out, who do you think is gonna, benefit or enjoy it the most? Is it gonna be families? Is it gonna be more couples? Is it gonna be romantic weekends away? And so I think sometimes just asking like those simple questions can really go a long way. So, and I'd love to help with that. So as you can see, I'm a big, I love branding. Branding is amazing. So
Yeah.
it's the foundation of
Uh,
what helps make me thrive.
yeah. 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 It looks like you also do a bit of email as well too. So I see like there's like you collect emails on your website after someone visits it. I don't know if you're collecting emails at the stage themselves, but can you talk to us a little bit about some of your strategies there?
Yeah. So we do both. So kind of like what you're saying, if you want to sign up for our newsletter on our site, you automatically get added. But then also too, we have StayFi at our properties. So anybody who stays there and logs into the internet, we capture that email right away. Um, I think our email campaign and strategy was very low the first few years that we started this, mostly from a standpoint of we were relying so heavily on OTAs, Airbnb, VRBO. And then once we had that ability to book direct, we really wanted to focus a lot of our time and energy to get people to book direct with us versus the OTAs. Because I think the biggest thing is too is like guests don't realize, I think, how much the service fees are on those
Yep.
OTAs and how it can really skyrocket a bill. But also too, like then as owners, as part of this brand journey, is you really then get to decide the touch points that your guests have with you and what those touch points look like. My husband and I are really personable people, and so for us, it's easy things of like, yes, here's a Wi-Fi code, here's all of this, but like also like, hey, we recommend like this is our favorite restaurant, this is our favorite place to get cheese curds. Like, really bringing in the draws also too of what bring people to your market. So they get our guests get an email from us of like, here are top places to eat. Here's where you can get some of the best old fashions, which is obviously a beloved Wisconsin cocktail. But then also, here's our favorite hiking trails. Like in the winter, we change it to like, here's our favorite snowshoeing trails or winter hikes. So it also creates that personal experience. But I think the biggest thing is too, is with the email campaigns, is not only you're able to talk and connect with people who booked with you, but also it gives other people the opportunity who may have stayed there as part of a group to book with you and get to know you as well. So we really leverage it as like, yeah, it may be hot and rainy here in the Midwest, but like our falls in the Midwest are like they're nationally known. So like, have you thought about fall yet? If so, use this code fall 2024 and book with us to receive 15% off. So for us, it's also a really great way for us to keep our calendars, full and busy, but then also to highlight things that people may have not known were going on in our market during certain seasons, but then also bring things to light that we as owners like love as well. So
Yeah. So it sounds like you do both the broadcast emails that may be more calendar specific, but you also do perhaps sequence emails that are kind of tied to when they stayed with you. Is that right?
yep, absolutely. Yes.
Do you use Stayfi's internal system? I think it's Switchback for all your email marketing, or are you channeling that somewhere else and building out your campaigns elsewhere?
So we're building out our campaigns elsewhere. So we use MailChimp. MailChimp is a great tool. We're able to have our StateFi like hook into our MailChimp so that our our list is actually pulling from our StateFi, and especially with our co-hosting properties, just because we have so many that we don't have to go pull lists every time. But I think the other thing too is with MailChimp, what we really love is that also from a marketing perspective, it's also doing the A and B testing for us. So it's like using one subject line for A, one subject line for B, and then looking at those analytics and comparing. I think the biggest thing is that, with today's age with technology, analytics are really a gift because you're able to see like what intrigues people and what doesn't intrigue people. Like, so if I send an email out about a concert series and hey, we still have openings on these weekends at these places, and then there's this big concert going on, people one, learn about the concert, two, they're like, oh, I'm gonna have somewhere to stay. But then also it really kind of helps us with our content strategy of what are things that people are interested in versus what they're not in. Because I think the biggest thing too is because we're actively building these lists all the time. We want to keep our subscribers versus having people unsubscribe from us as well. So it's really making sure that the content is relevant and fresh and we're just not spamming people with things that they really don't want. So it really helps shape our content strategy as well.
Yeah. So are you doing A/B testing on just the title of the email, or are you also changing the content within the emails when you're doing your A/B testing?
So we do a little bit of both. It really kind of depends. The subject line is always for me the biggest one. Are people going with the fun one or something that's like really direct into the point? But also too, it's watching with Mailchimp and all that. It's also watching that heat mapping of do people tend to scroll more and read through the email if there's lots of photos or lots of text. So how can we also make it graphically appealing so that when people open it, they want to keep scrolling to learn more versus like just hitting that instant delete button. So we're really kind of doing it with both because in a lot of ways too, everybody's looking at email on their phones these days. So if you put a lot of content in there, it's more scrolling, which means there'll probably be less action because people are going to have to read through more. So it's kind of also looking at what that user experience looks like of are they opening it on desktop? Are they opening it on phone? And if so, how is the content different when you open it and view it on a phone from an analytics perspective than a desktop? So it's really kind of also just really punching those numbers to see what is more beneficial and where people tend to sway and go.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Um, are there any tactics that you're looking to over the next few years refine or invest a bit more heavily into?
Yeah, I would say, the biggest thing from a tactics perspective is we've really been so because we do have 4 seasons here in the Midwest in our market. Um, our biggest thing for us is really focusing on having like the photos and the experience for the seasons that are coming up. So we've really been working with a lot of our co-hosting properties to make sure that we have photos of the exterior of the house in fall. We have the photos of the exterior house in spring when everything's in bloom. In summer when it's super hot, but then also in winter, like in winter and fall. So it's really kind of almost having building, I want to say, our content and our marketing for this season so that when I email somebody about fall, I can show them what each property looks like in fall because all of our places sit in the forest. So in the fall, when you've got all of those like warm yellows and oranges and that pop of color, when you're starting to email somebody, like I just did one the other day for fall, it's showing everybody what fall looked like in Door County. So it entices them to come in fall. So really kind of trying to bring that experience of what they're going to have as a guest through photos so that they want to come and stay with you like during that actual season. So it's really kind of building up, I want to say, like our marketing arsenal of making
Yep.
sure we have photos. My husband got a drone. He's learned the drone. He loves the drone. Drone footage is great, not only for email, but like social content. But we've also started to build out YouTube videos of like, this is what this property looks like doing walkthroughs, having it be, fall oriented. Like, here are some things you can walk to in the fall if you stay at this house, this festival on this week. So it's really kind of like creating that experience for guests and really kind of marketing and selling the properties and that experience based on the season, just because so many people come here for fall and summer and whatnot. So they kind of know what to expect. But then also just really kind of bring awareness to also where they're staying.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you're still somewhat in the early days of launching the motel and getting the seasons through,
And
but what have you seen as being the biggest difference from a branding slash marketing perspective between marketing your short-term rentals versus marketing the motels?
the motels, I would really say, we do a lot with the motel around like big event, like just big events that are coming up versus like very, I'm going to say, very specific things. So when we do a lot of our marketing for the motel, it's around like seasons and it's around what are things that are happening just in general, like in the county versus like specifically in the town that we're sitting in. I would also say the biggest thing too is that when people come up, they come up for less. Our nightly stays are less at the motel than they are at our short-term rentals. So it's really kind of around like what are the quick things that you can do or things that you might want to check out versus like this longer, 3 to 5 day experience like we have with our short-term rentals. So we kind of really focus on that. But I think the other big thing too is that our market specifically has a ton of events. Like tons of events. Like there's a concert series that goes on every week right across from the motel. There's festivals every weekend that's within walking or a 10-minute driving distance. So we really kind of focus on like the big things that are happening in the county versus, being able to go and do some hiking trails and then come back and, enjoy a glass of wine around our fire pit. So I would say it's a lot more macro with our marketing versus micro when it comes to our short term rentals.
And do you attribute that to being the motel versus the SDR, or more so the type of avatars that are choosing to stay at each one of those? It sounds like it's because the motel, it's you're having shorter stays. That avatars might be a little bit different. They're traveling for different reasons. Versus your SDRs, where the avatar may be staying longer. They have larger families that they're traveling with. They get to have more intimate experiences with the things around it.
Yes, that is definitely it. I mean, our avatar for the motel is definitely a lot different than the avatar for any of our short-term rentals. And I think it's also too, trying to once again, it's kind of doing that market audience, that research of, what are it's also the guest interaction. Like the questions we get at our motel around things of like what to do, where to eat is a lot different than we do at our short-term rentals. And so I think it's understanding that as well, but also too, like when we're up at the motel, we love to talk to people. What brought you to Door County? Where are you from? Like, what are some things that you like to enjoy? What are some of the amenities? Our amenities at the motel are completely different than what they are at a short-term rental. So it's also kind of figuring out like what do the people who stay at the motel want versus what do the people who stay at our short-term rentals want? And they really do, it is incredibly different, to say the least. So it's really kind of just like digging in, asking those questions, but then also too, looking at it from a high level versus a low level. So kind of less touch points when you stay at a motel versus more touch
Yep.
points when you stay at a short term rental.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like the feedback loop is rather important to you, but probably more so, it's important to really fine tune your brand and your guest avatar. Like by having those conversations, by understanding what they need, that's allowing you to refine your amenities list, but also what you communicate in your branding and all your content.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you really you don't know what you don't know, and, when we have guests, like, at our short-term rentals, people who are like, "I really love the space," like, use that opportunity to be like, "What do you love about the space? Do you love the furniture? Do you love the fact that it's got more pillows? Do you want more blankets?" Like, it's really, like, the simple things like that where, it's asking, "Would you be willing to give more feedback?" And then taking that feedback and really kind of, like, running with it. But I think the other thing too is that if you have friends or family that fit that avatar that, you're really looking for. So like prime example, all of our places are dog friendly. My husband and I have a dog. We don't have any kids. So it's like for us, it's like as we bring our dog with us everywhere, because we really honestly do, it's things like having a water bowl and a food bowl on a little like doggy mat at every single one of our places. So you know that dogs are welcome. It's like the little things that just like really go a long distance when you know that you're really trying to hone in on something or something that makes you different than anybody else that you're staying with in the market. So it's almost putting yourself in other people's shoes. Or if you have kids, all of our friends have kids, and it's like, man, having a pack and play is huge because those things take up so much car or so much room in a car. And if you're bringing three kids, like having one there is a huge help. Or, even things of being able to be like, yes, our Wi Fi is good enough for you to hook up your baby monitor. Those baby monitor video cameras are, then it seems like every parent had one. Once again, I don't have kids, but like being able to provide something in our guidebook of, hey, did you bring a baby monitor for, your kids? This is what we recommend for you to be able to hook it up to the internet because sometimes, our stay fi will stop people from being able to go through. So it's like little things like that that really can just make a difference, with that experience, and it just further helps build your brand as you kind of grow and move forward.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Maybe kind of last like STR slash direct booking question. Um, how if you were not in like the experience of branding and PR, would you have gotten into direct bookings? Was that always something that you wanted to do, or kind of like why is that important to you in the first place?
I think so. Direct bookings for us, also from an operations side, once again, left brain is my husband. Obviously, you make more money with direct bookings. You're not having to pay Airbnb. You're not getting a host service charge. Like But it's also too, I think it's important that people work with you directly. Like there is nothing more, and this is my personal opinion, there's nothing more frustrating than building your dream home on somebody else's land. And that's how I think of like the OTAs. Like, yes, they're great when you're first starting out, but you are building a business off of somebody else's, I want to say, choice. And they can take you off their platform at any second. And then it's like, what do? You you've put everything on that when you don't have anything yourself that you can fall back. And I am a very independent person. And so for me, it was really important for my husband and I to build this business and have our own structure and our own foundation. So if someday, if Airbnb, let's say, gets completely banned around the United States, or our market decides to ban Airbnb, we have something to fall back on. And we're not relying on somebody else to drive our business forward.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a very common reason. I hear a lot of times the occupancy and the higher revenues by going direct is a big driver. But I think more so, I'm hearing that it's really that you're at the mercy of the OTAs when you're solely reliant on them. Actually, like I have one more additional question on that one. Do you think it's important for folks to invest into their direct bookings early on, or is this something that they should really focus on after they've got to a certain amount of scale?
I think it's something that I think even before you put your place on an Airbnb or a Vrbo or an OTA, you should have direct booking first. I think that it is almost more important than the other two that you have that set up and you're comfortable with it, because as you start to grow, and I think as things start to change with these OTAs, I think people are starting to realize that more people are doing direct versus going through that. I always say the song and dance that's very awkward is when people are like, oh, like they'll find you on Airbnb and then they'll message you being like, oh, do you take direct bookings? And you can't be like, yes, here's my website, because you don't want to get kicked off. But I think also being able to be like, yes, we at so and so would love to host you. And you have that really cryptic way of doing it. It allows people then to be like, okay, I just got to look at X, Y, and Z. And then boom, it's a direct booking right there. Cause I think once again, the biggest thing is, especially when you have families and, with inflation, people are always looking for easier ways to save some money, and direct booking is that way. So I think having it as your core foundation and then adding the OTAs after, for me, I wish we would have done it right out the gate. We did it probably, I want to say, like 2 or 3 months after being, underway, where we were like, okay, we should really do the direct bookings thing. I wish it was something we would have come out with right out of the gate, before we even went on Airbnb and all of that. So I think it's crucial to do direct booking first.
Yeah, yeah. I share the same mentality, which is kind of why we ended up starting direct like Craft Estates as a company to help people really build really good looking sites very early on without the really high upfront investment. But also like why we
Mhm.
started this podcast is really to help people get really comfortable with direct bookings, because it could seem very, very daunting to try direct bookings where it's much easier for you to rely on the OTAs and have them bring everybody to you. But starting direct bookings, you're having to think about building your website, how to drive traffic to it. And my main goal is really to help folks really ease into it very early on in their journey, because it does take a little while to really build that momentum there, and start to get your own direct bookings from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and it's also companies like you, like with Craft Estate Skill, where when we started, there wasn't really anybody. So we kind of had, thank God my husband works in tech, because he kind of already knew what to do. I worked in marketing. So it was easy for us to kind of bring our brains together and come up with it. But I think the biggest thing now being able to take the fear out of it. Is the fear is the biggest thing, because you don't know what you don't know when you start something new. So as long as you have that opportunity to learn and grow and take those baby steps, it's so worth it. So
Yeah. I think you may have answered one of the 2 questions that I usually end with, which is probably a good transition towards that. I usually ask 2 questions. One's a mindset question, and then the other one is really the big takeaway, the tactical, takeaway. But kind of the first one there is like, what advice would you give to someone that's starting something completely new?
I mean, my advice is embrace it. Embrace. I don't want to say embrace the fear, but embrace the unknown. And I know that's really that can be a little cliche, but it's true. You don't know what you don't know, and you got to make progress over perfection. You can focus on perfection later. But taking those baby steps, doing your research, like Googling, getting kind of just a base knowledge of things and then building it off of that, I think is just something that will not only one help you as an entrepreneur, as a host, but also it's gonna help change the whole way you look at your business and growing your business. So embrace the unknown because you grow through what you go through. That is my mentality. And you gotta be able to grow if you go through something, regardless how hard it is. But be gentle to yourself. Like you're gonna stumble sometimes, you're gonna fall. You just gotta pick yourself back up, but you're going to be a better person on the other side because of it.
I love that. I love that, and I love the early example of like going through some of those learnings with launching your motel, and some of the challenges you had to go through and what you came out of it as well. Um,
Yeah, we all
the
became
la-
well as experts. That's all I can say. We're all
yeah,
well as experts now at this point.
yeah. So the last real question is, what's the one tactical thing that you want folks to really take away from today's conversation? What's that one thing that you want them to put in practice?
Think about building a brand. Not think about it, do it. Build a brand. Do do the Google search of what is a brand? How do you build a brand? What are the questions you ask when building a brand? Like start to really determine like who your avatar is and start to determine like how you want your avatar to view you and your short-term rental, your company, because when you build that brand, like think of a Hilton, think of a North Face, like yes, like you know what you're going to get or the quality of the product. You don't buy the product itself, you buy the brand. So take those hard steps, those unknown steps, and really start to think about what you want to be and who you want to be and who you want to be to people. It's going to help you not only make your marketing spend go so much farther in the long run, but it's also going to start be something that people are like, oh, I've stayed there before. Oh, but they have a new one. I know that it's going to be the same quality, the same standard as this one. It just might swing more people. So build your brand because your brand is going to be the foundation of how you excel and drive your business and the experience you give your guests moving forward.
I love that. Love that. Thank you, Katie, for sharing kind of your entire journey of how you got into STRs in the first place, your journey into getting your first co-hosting client, and the transition to your motels, and also giving us a glimpse of how you think about branding, how you think about marketing, how you think about direct booking in general. It was a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate you spending the time today.
Thanks for having me. This has been a ton of fun.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.